In this video, I'm sharing some tips on how to shoot with black backdrops, including how to set up your photos and videos, and also how to edit them, and helping you to avoid some common issues that often come up when shooting with black backdrops. So the first thing is to use a tripod, and a tripod is going to stabilize your camera, and it's going to allow you to control your camera settings, because you actually want to control how much light comes into the photo. You don't want it to be too bright because it will blow out the detail in the black backdrop. The second tip is to use black foam boards, and this will help to block some of the light coming in if you have too much light coming in. You can also funnel the light in really interesting ways, and it really allows you to shape the light, whether you're doing flat lays or 45-degree angle or head-on shots just like this. And one of the things that you might run into is you might have, for a flat lay, for instance, if your settings were just maybe a little bit too bright, you might have a little bit of harsh highlights right here, like I do in this photo, where it kind of washes out the detail in the dark backdrop. But as you see, as it goes down, the exposure kind of balances out and evens out. So how do we fix this in our photos if the light is uneven and causing kind of harsh highlights in sections? Well, if I want to edit it like this, there are some really easy ways that I can do that. For me, the easiest thing to do is, instead of making adjustments all over like you would in this panel to the entire photo, I want to make adjustments to just a section of my photo. So I'm going to go to the graduated filter, and I'm going to space the lines apart, because what that's going to do is that's going to reduce a harsh editing line. The closer that these lines are together, the harsher the line is for where the edits were taking place. So everything kind of above the middle line, kind of all that's in red, is what's going to be edited. So I'm going to move it so that I get it right where I want everything to be edited. Move it up just a touch. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the highlights, because the highlights are kind of blown out and blowing out the darker detail. So I'm going to lower that quite a bit. Now, if you have objects in your scene that are being edited with the filter and you don't like what it does to them, you can edit those separately with another filter. But I'm going to just reduce the exposure so that we can retain some of that detail. I'm going to increase the texture. I find that when I increase clarity, it increases the highlights a bit more. So instead of using the clarity, I'm going to use texture. And I often find that if I use the dehaze to even out the tone, that can work. However, it does kind of change the color a little bit, like the white balance. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to try to just change that just a bit so that the white balance in this section kind of matches the white balance down through here. So I'm going to move this down just a little bit. And so you can kind of play with the position of this just to kind of see if you're kind of hitting the right edits to make everything look as even as possible. And you want to be careful that you don't want to, make it look uneven like this, where it's really, really dark on the top, because that's not natural, obviously. So you want it to look as natural as possible, and try to gradiate your edits so that it flows kind of naturally in your photo. Also, what you could do is, if you wanted to just crop out those highlights, you can always do that. I find that usually when I shoot bigger, the highlights in a section of the photo show up even more. But in this case, I wanted to keep the entire crop, so I just kept it as is. And you can individually see, I already have individual radial filters. So this is a circle, and I have gone in and edited this particular section. I can also go in and edit the pomegranates if I want to increase kind of the clarity in that, or the texture, or increase or decrease shadows or anything. And I can actually go in and I can right click and I can duplicate that. So if I like that edit and I want to match it to another section, I just duplicate it and then I press done when I'm done. Now, what you can also do to combat highlights for harsh differentiation of the light with a black backdrop is you can place objects on the scene that will help absorb that extra light. So in this case, it's a lot brighter up here in this corner because the light was coming from over here. But the bowl of oats is actually absorbing those highlights. So you don't really see the differentiation as much. Now you do have shadows there, which is going to make those shadows darker, but that's pretty natural looking. And in this photo, it's very, very subtle. The differentiation between the top of the frame and the bottom. So if I want to just edit that just a touch, it's really just going to be pretty minor. I'm not really going to have to do much, so I'm just going to edit it a little bit so that it looks as natural as possible, but that I retain the detail in the backdrop and everything looks evenly lit. So there you go. That's kind of a before and after. And then if we look at this one again, we can kind of see a easy before and after.